All right, good morning, everybody. It is just after 10 a.m. here. We're doing an update on our potential tropical cyclone, disturbance 3, whatever you want to call it. It is still not a depression. It is still just that disturbance, and still not a storm either, but it has got a lot more shower and thunderstorm activity on the east side of it. So that's something different today than what we were seeing even last night, but still very dry on the west side. Moving northeast now, so it has a little bit of a northeast movement to it at 14, and it's 220 miles south of Morgan City. Big change with this update, or I should say big. The change with this update is the Hurricane Center, our hurricane hunters are in there right now, and they found that the center is actually a little bit further east than where they were initially placing it. So what does that mean down the road? Well, of course, that means that the impacts could shift just a little bit east. And typically we wouldn't be worried about this with such a lopsided system, but it's such a fine line on who's going to see the heaviest rain here that these little minor changes, they do matter to our forecast and what you might see. So there's the forecast cone. It shifted a little bit to the east, very minor, but it did. And they still have it forecasted to become maybe a tropical storm later today. Tropical Storm Claudette, and then have it make landfall sometime tonight. We'll say around midnight, give or take, as a weak tropical storm, maybe 45-mile-per-hour sustained winds or so, somewhere in southeast Louisiana. But you'll notice that does put most of our area smack dab in the middle of it. Now, typically, if this was a hurricane, we'd be thinking, well, this isn't good, but this is actually a good thing because under the center and west of the center is going to get barely any rainfall, it looks like. I mean, there's going to be some rain here and there, but overall the impacts are going to be east of that center, stretching into Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida. And that's probably where the heaviest of the heaviest rain is going to fall with this thing when it's all said and done. Now, there is this big old, basically, blob of heavy rainfall, tropical downpours right off the coast. It is creeping to the north. It's doing it slowly, but it is getting there. About 3 hours ago, it was off the mouth of the river. Now it's getting up into Upper Plaquemines and St. Bernard, and some of that rainfall down in the Grand Isle area. So we'll keep an eye on this as it all builds to the north. We could start to see some of the more heavier rainfall get closer to the metro by, let's say, lunchtime or so to give it safe, give or take. But right now, this is kind of the main area we're watching to see how far this advances as the overall system is moving kind of to the north. So you can see there, if this all moved to the north, Houma, Thibodaux, Morgan City, up along the river, you're kind of on that dry side right there. You might not get much of that. So that's why we think the highest flooding threat is going to be really as you go to the east. There are some tropical downpours like through Hammond. None of those are a big deal right now. They are moving at a good rate and not causing much in the way of problems. So kind of showing you some of our high resolution models. It does show that blob of rain coming up over the area. And this model may not have adjusted just yet to where that center is relocated. So notice it's got this big old batch of heavy rainfall moving over parts of the metro by maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 o'clock. We'll see if that actually plays out like that. It could possibly happen, but we'll have to wait and see. Then as we go into this evening, that axis of heavy rain, where that heaviest rain is going to start to gradually move towards the east as the center of the storm right in there. Notice nothing really with it, but this heavy rain starts to lift on out to the east as well. So that's why we think the highest flooding threat is really going to be from New Orleans, Slidell, and to the east. If you're west of that, the chance that you see rain is still there, but the flooding threat does not look all that high as we go into this afternoon and into this evening. So the thinking here has changed a little bit, meaning we're growing more confident that out here to the west of 55, Thibodaux up through Hammond, if you're west of that kind of line, if you draw a line, your flooding threat, it just doesn't look like it's going to be there today, as you'll be on the mainly west side of this system as it blows on through. Now, as we go into tomorrow morning, this is 9, 10, 11 o'clock, noon tomorrow, look, it's gone. There's dry air wrapping up in this. We might not see a whole lot of rain tomorrow. There'll probably still be a few little tropical downpours, but overall, this kind of tail of moisture should stay offshore tomorrow for the most part. Now, as we go into Sunday, we'll have to watch that tail of moisture that streams down. And let me zoom out and you can actually see what I'm talking about here. This is a broad view. That would be the center of whatever is left of maybe Claudette. We'll wait and see. There's that tail of moisture. This will likely get drawn up into us by Sunday. So our rain chances on Sunday will probably be higher than they are on Saturday, and they may not be high at all on Saturday. Now, the rainfall forecast, this hasn't really updated just yet, but I would not be surprised if we see some of our our values here drop, and I have dropped some of our values. Now, I want to keep in mind, it is still possible we get flooding rainfall in New Orleans. It's looking less and less likely, but it's still way too early to give the all clear there. So we'll say a widespread 4 to 7 inches, kind of in this orangey color, and then maybe 6 to 8 as you get over towards Mobile. I think that's where some of the heaviest will be. And then once you get west of New Orleans, maybe 2 to 4. Home of Thibodeau, might not even see 2 inches of rain. And then once you start to see these blue colors, that is less than an inch. So you're not going to have problems out in Lafayette, Lake Charles, and even in Baton Rouge. Probably not going to see barely any rain from this. And we'll kind of have that dividing line somewhere, somewhere in here it looks like. So we'll just have to see how that evolves. And that'll be mainly this afternoon into tonight. And then by tomorrow morning, a lot of you aren't even going to notice you've got problems. So this model's doing a really good job of painting the trickiness of this forecast, because, you know, this model, and this is a model, right? This is not telling you this is exactly what's going to happen, but it shows you that here in Upper Plaquemines, you might have, I don't know, 3, 5, 7 inches of rain, and then you go to the West Bank, or you go to the East Bank right here in New Orleans, and you've got an inch of rain. That's a big difference in a short amount of distance, and that looks very possible somewhere in here, and it happens to be right over where the most populated areas are here in southeast Louisiana. Now, the Mississippi coast still has a pretty good chance of seeing some flooding rainfall, I think. Have to keep an eye on that, have to keep an eye on the rivers, and then your totals will be pretty high as well as you go into Alabama and the Florida Panhandle. Of course, you know, we don't expect big surge issues with this event. A couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago at this point, when we had all the water rise over in the river parishes, we had all the water rising in Mississippi with that persistent wind. This will be even less than that in some spots, about the same in some others, but 2 to 3 feet, that's not a big deal. Now, the low-lying roads, everyone who lives down there, anytime you get a strong wind and you see a little water rise, that's probably what this will look like in the end. But just keep it in mind, you know, you're going to see a little water rise here and there. 1 to 2 feet in the lake, that's not significant, but it's probably enough, and a southerly wind enough where you're going to get some water flooding right there along the lakefront, like in Mandeville, the typical roads that get water on them. So that'll probably happen in this case, because keep in mind, the storm's going to come in like this. The winds will be out of the east for a while, and then once the storm blows through, you'll have more of a southerly wind coming in from behind it, and then you'll eventually have a southwest wind tomorrow and Sunday. That'll keep pushing a little water up towards the Mandeville, Lacombe area and right in there, but it doesn't look like anything too terribly significant. Now, the tropical storm warning, it looks like it's been trimmed back for some, but it really just includes most of southeast Louisiana, except for Washington and northern Tangi. It includes the Mississippi coast and all areas south of the lake. So these are spots where you could see some stronger winds. I don't think we're going to see widespread significant winds at all, but there might be some strong gusts here and there. Anywhere in the orange, maybe 35, 45 at times. That could certainly, now we're thinking, might get on the North Shore, but either way, these are going to be perhaps some tropical storm force winds for a few locations, especially near the coast. I mean, there's less friction down there. That's where you're going to get your strongest winds. But while winds are not going to be a significant threat, it only takes one, tree limb coming down, hitting a power line, and then you don't have power for a while. So it's just something to keep in mind if you don't have a generator or things like that. Now, when those winds might arrive and start to pick up, it'll probably be later on through the afternoon and into tonight is what it looks like. And you can see there, this is by 6, 7 o'clock, you've got some of those tropical storm force winds, maybe up to 40, 45 miles an hour getting towards the coast. That'll probably start around 3 or 4 or 5 down along the coast. And if we do see some of those stronger winds in New Orleans, it will probably be closer to maybe 9, 10, 11 o'clock, and then spreading up over the area, getting to the Slidell area by midnight to 1 a.m., and then spreading up over the rest of the area through the overnight hours. And then by tomorrow morning, it's still going to be pretty windy, but things will start to improve across the area. So let me recap just in case you missed the front end of this. If you're watching us on our app or on Facebook, hurricane hunters have been in there. They have not found anything terribly organized. It is slowly still organizing. It has been. You've got this big old area of showers and storms that have come together. The center is going to be somewhere right in there. You can see where they've been flying all around. That's them trying to detect where the center of this thing is. And it's still somewhat broad. So it's not a depression yet. It's still that potential tropical cyclone 3, which just means it's still a disturbance at this point. But there's a center, there's all the rain, and that's how it's going to look as it makes its way inland. The closer that center gets to us here in New Orleans and southeast Louisiana, the better off we are. This is that one time when you actually want that center to go over your house. In a hurricane, you don't want to be there. But in this case, you definitely want to be there because that's going to push that drier air closer, and it's going to push that rain further and further to the east. And that has been the trend through today. But there is still kind of a watch and wait and see what happens with this thing as we go through the remainder of today. And I'll show you the track one more time. It does take it right over our area, which isn't a bad thing. It might be a tropical storm at landfall, but that's really not the main thing here. It's the heavy rain. So you can imagine as this all moves, this big blob of rain will move with it and spread up this direction. West of the river parishes, might not see hardly a drop of rain from this. So that's just how these go. And it is moving. A couple people have asked me, is this going to stall? No, it's going to continue to move. Once it gets up here to our area, it'll get into the westerlies, and that's what's going to turn this thing off towards eventually like Birmingham and going up towards Atlanta, where it'll cause some rain and gusty winds up there. So that's what we're looking at right now with the latest on our potential tropical cyclone 3, meaning just still an unorganized disturbance, but slowly getting more organized. We'll likely still have maybe a depression, tropical storm later today. They do have it making landfall as a weak tropical storm, maybe 45-mile-per-hour sustained winds around midnight, anywhere from Terrebonne to Plaquemines Parish. It looks like it could come on in. And the further east it goes, the better off we're going to be. So that's going to do it for our 10 a.m. advisory. Of course, we get our next intermediate update at 1 a.m. and we'll see if we have a depression or a tropical storm by then. 1 p.m., not a.m. Thanks, everybody.